Alright, so I made a post a few days ago talking about how I had filed a FOIA request specifically for this image. This is something that I found in the Epstein files around the time they came out, the 3.5 million files that had been released, and I looked around specifically for anything that pertained to this meeting that Epstein had set up with Staley and Benjamin Netanyahu, and I found some reference to it from a guy named Jacob Frenkel, where he sent Staley an image that they had taken while they were visiting with Benjamin Netanyahu. So I fired off the FOIA request. Here's kind of what I put in the description. I said something along the lines of, this file presents an email chain which is initiated by an individual named Jacob Frenkel. In Jacob's email, which was sent to a man named Staley, a redacted image is located directly beneath the lines which read, quote, I found this photo from our visit with Bibi Netanyahu. Regards, Jacob. And basically, I just went on to describe exactly what I was talking about. And as you can see in the email, it's very obvious what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about that big gray box with the X going through it. And so I fired that off. It was a success. I got an email saying, okay, well, we'll get back to you within 33 days. Well, they ended up getting back to me on like the 13th or something. And I basically got another very generic response, just like the one that I got from my state senator, Mark Kelly, when I emailed him about why he isn't doing more regarding the Epstein files, why he isn't doing more regarding Epstein's co-conspirators who are still out there, who are not protected by the non-prosecution agreement for crimes committed in New York, which we know they committed. And I was also pointing out the fact that nobody's going after the whole Ghislaine situation. We're not even certain if that's her in there. It might be a body double, and she's getting all kinds of very preferable, favorable treatment, kind of like actually running that minimum security facility, which is complete bullshit. He sent back like a very generic response. Kind of got the same thing here. And this is actually from something called like the Office of Internal Policies or something like that. I'm going to get more into that in a second. But here's basically the header of the email. They said, this responds to your Freedom of Information Act request for the Jeffrey Epstein and or Ghislaine Maxwell files. Right off the bat, you can tell they don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. They ascertained the fact that I was talking about something to do with the Epstein files, and they sent back basically just a buckshot blast of different rules and regulations that they can cite to get away with not telling us what they're supposed to be telling us. So let me run you through some of those real quick, and I'll explain why they're complete and utter bullshit. First of all, they cited the Epstein Files Transparency Act clauses, which deem which information can or cannot be redacted. And in point A, you can see it in yellow, it says, if the material contains personally identifiable information of victims or victims' personal and medical files and similar files, the disclosure of which would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. So that would mean, if that was the reason why they were doing this, that Staley, Jacob Frenkel, and Benjamin Netanyahu, for some reason, were in the possession of Epstein's victims' personal information, things that we could use to identify Epstein's victims with. Why the fuck would that be the case? That doesn't make any sense, right? Well, it kind of does to me at this point, but for their excuses and what we've been told by them, it doesn't make any sense. So point B says, if it depicts or contains child sexual abuse materials as defined under blah, 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 and prohibited under blah, blah, blah. Okay, so basically that would mean that at some point during this meeting or during the time in which this meeting was supposed to take place, this period of time, Jacob Frenkel and Staley and Benjamin Netanyahu were in the possession of child sexual abuse materials. Now, as we all know, there is no investigation into any of these three individuals. There hasn't been in the past. They never got cleared for any of this, and there is no current investigation, and there's also no plans for any investigation into these three. So if these people were in possession of CSAM material and they weren't being investigated, I mean, that wouldn't be a good look either. So that's not an excuse. We move on to point C. If it would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution, provided that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary. So first of all, if this was the case, it would have to be narrowly tailored and temporary. Second of all, this material wouldn't jeopardize any investigation. This happened over 12 years ago. So any investigation taking place today would have to be jeopardized by this material in order for this rule to make sense. And thirdly, on this point, once again, there is no investigation going on. So this can't be the reason why. And so the last point per the Epstein Files Transparency Act is D. if it depicts or contains images of death, physical abuse, or injury of any person. Which, once again, if there's no investigations, past, present, or intended in the future of any three of these individuals, then this cannot possibly be the case. If there is not CSAM in here, if there is not images of death and physical abuse and injury of people, no crimes are being committed because obviously they're not being investigated, then none of these reasons can possibly apply to the situation and to the image that I'm trying to have unredacted. It just doesn't make any sense. But then they go on to cite a few more conditions here. This is in the United States Code or whatever. This is under the FOIA rules in the USC. We have one rule which concerns matters specifically exempted from the release by statute, which pertains to child sexual abuse material. It's basically the same thing. It's very redundant. The Epstein Files Transparency Act basically covered all of the FOIA rules already. But again, there is no child sexual abuse materials because there's no investigation of any of these people. So that can't possibly be the reason. The next USC code says if it concerns certain inter- and intra-agency communications protected by certain civil discovery privileges. So this doesn't make sense for two reasons. One, why would Jacob Frankel and Jess Staley, who are private sector civilians here in America, and a foreign leader, Benjamin Netanyahu, be in possession of or be capable of showing any kind of inter- or intra-agency communications for any kind of correspondence between or within United States government agencies or departments? That doesn't make any sense, but it also doesn't make any sense because they could simply redact that portion of the image. So if there was sensitive information between or within government agencies that was being shown for some reason, they could absolutely just do another one of those little black boxes and just, redact all the material that you can actually see and leave the rest of the image completely untouched. And then finally, they cited this rule, which is evidence that contains material, the release of which would constitute a clearly unwarranted invasion of the personal privacy of third parties. Now, in this context, because Jacob Frankel sent an email to Jess Staley referenced Epstein, and it's specifically about Benjamin Netanyahu, who is also named in the files in many other places. These are not considered third parties. So these would have to be people that were caught in the background, were potentially caught in other places. But specifically, it would have to reveal something about people who are basically have nothing to do with the situation that would actually cause other people to be able to invade their privacy, which makes absolutely no fucking sense. So you're telling me Benjamin Netanyahu took a picture with Jess Staley, two of them are standing next to each other potentially, and somebody in the background is holding up their social security card, hey, look, this is my social security card in the background. And again, they could just redact that stuff. So they could leave the rest of the image completely clear and untouched and draw a small black box over anything that could be deemed an invasion of personal privacy. Okay, so they're obviously bullshitting me here. So I read further into the email response that they sent me, and it turns out that you can actually send mail in or call the United States Department of Justice. Their physical address is here. It's 441 G Street, Northwest, Washington, D.C. And their telephone number is 202-514-3642. Now, I opted for a different option. I decided to go to the Office of Internal Policy's FOIA Star portal. I actually created an account there so that I could use their FOIA system for tracking appeals and requests. And once I created my account, I quickly read the rules. As they're stated here, it says, submitting a FOIA administrative appeal, the OIP adjudicates appeals from the actions of any Department of Justice component, such as the component that I tried to FOIA request, which was the Office of the Deputy Attorney General, who basically shut me down. And they say, when submitting an administrative appeal to the Office of Internal Policies, you must identify the component of the Department of Justice whose action you are appealing and or provide the initial request number assigned by that component if known. Your appeal must be postmarked or transmitted to OIP within 90 days of the date of the letter from the component responding to your request. So we're getting into some extreme bureaucracy here, but I went ahead and I did do this. I submitted the appeal and I wrote a somewhat long message. It's about 5,000 words, and I basically said, here's what happened, here's what you guys said, here's why that doesn't make any sense, and I want a specific reason why you guys won't give me this photo in particular. I do not want a broad shotgun response containing a whole bunch of different rules that might apply. I want to know the specific reason. I want somebody to look at the picture and then tell me which rule actually applies so that we, the people, cannot see this fucking picture. Because at this point, I'm getting fucking pissed off with these people. And so I fired that off and I got my confirmation. They received it on the 14th of March, Pi Day, 2026. Great. And so I expect to hear back from them at some point. But this is not looking good. Honestly, guys, why the fuck do I have to be doing this with my time? I have better stuff to be doing, especially because they're inflating our fucking dollars, they're taxing the shit out of us, gas is now going up, food is going up like crazy. Why do I have to be spending my time trying to hold people accountable that the government should be holding accountable? The whole fucking thing is rotten, they're not our friends. I don't even recognize them really as our government anymore. I don't take them fucking seriously. And if they don't get back to me and actually provide a good answer on this or provide us all with the picture, I'm not fucking paying my taxes. Straight up, like, I'm gonna cite this as the reason why I'm not fucking paying my taxes. This is not a one-way street. They don't just tell us to pay our fucking taxes, and then I'm submitting appeals, I'm submitting FOIA requests, and I'm trying to reach out to my fucking state senator, and I'm getting bullshit and bullshit back. I'm getting a mountain of bullshit and nothing but lies. And I'm not fucking putting up with it anymore. They are our servants, or that's what they're supposed to be anyways. But you know what they are nowadays? Our federal government specifically is nothing but a bunch of fucking child molesting pieces of shit. They're decadent, depraved, degenerate assholes who do absolutely nothing. They suck at their jobs, they don't come up with solutions, and they rape fucking children. They're absolutely useless. They're beyond useless is a compliment. What they really are is giant parasites. It is a giant parasitic system that we have fed with our tax dollars over the years. We thought we were paying into things like Social Security funds and Medicaid funds. Those are all bankrupt now. And now they're even employing the debt that they created, like in the case of student debt. They're applying that against us. And they're like, oh, do you want some student debt relief? Come join ICE. Yeah, we're gonna make your life hell in all kinds of different ways and make your life completely dysfunctional. And then you'll come do stupid, terrible stuff for us so that you can barely survive and feel like you're living a halfway decent life. I don't think so, man. I don't think so. I'm not cool with that. This life is way more complicated than it needs to be. I don't need to be doing this bullshit. For real, I don't need to be doing this. This is a waste of my fucking time, all because a bunch of fucking assholes decided to go molest a bunch of children. And now simple, decent people like you and I have to put up with their mistakes. And we have to waste a bunch of time, waste a bunch of money, and get trampled on in a completely authoritarian manner, all because they don't want to get caught. All because they want to distract everybody from what's really going on. And apparently, we need to kill, 140 elementary school students, a bunch of little girls with a fucking Raytheon Tomahawk missile on the other side of the planet to make that happen as well. So if I were you, I'd really start deciding what you're going to do about this, because I guarantee you this, your life's going to keep getting worse until we do something about the federal government. They are our number one enemy at this point. Every single problem, they're the common denominator for. So seriously start considering maybe how you're gonna resist a little bit, whether that's through taxation or other means. But yeah, I'm gonna stop there before I end up overdosing or falling out of a high-rise apartment or getting hit by a school bus or something. That's all I have to say for now. See you in the next one.